Okay, welcome everybody. We're going to call to order the Planning and Zoning Board meeting for today, Wednesday, August 6th. Do we need to start with a roll call? Do we need to have that?
Yes, we'll do Dan Waleski.
Here.
Hank Paulsky.
Here.
Dave Matthews.
Here.
Mark Hum. Juan Cotton. You have a quorum.
Okay. Any additions or I guess Pledge of Allegiance?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, any additions, deletions, or reordering?
There are none.
There are none. Excellent. So approval of the minutes from June 4th. Did anyone have a chance to review those? Do you have a motion?
I'll make a motion to approve or second, either way.
Okay. So
Same thing, yeah.
we have a motion and we have a second
Yeah.
from Mark.
Yeah, whoever.
All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any nays? Nope, unanimous. Okay. Cases, swearing in of staff and applicants.
Do you swear and affirm the testimony you give will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth? If so, say yes. Thank you.
Okay, moving right on to board disclosures. Any board disclosures today? No. Excellent.
Nope.
Okay, unfinished business. Ordinance 2025-04. Do we need to read the entire title, or is this one that we can just?
I believe we are allowed to not read the whole title. They have to read it when it gets to City Commission, but we can save Elizabeth from having to read the whole thing.
Perfect. Then let's move on. So this is kind of the meat of the agenda tonight, I believe.
Yeah, this is one of our bigger items tonight. So this, as you guys will probably remember, came before you in June, and it was continued to this meeting to give you all some more time to review. So this is our big summer housekeeping, amending all of these different sections. If you want, we can, go through the summary of all the things that are being amended, or we can just kind of go straight to some quick notes on the suggested edits that we got in June. So at that meeting, we got some feedback from you all about potentially revising that green roof definition to differentiate incentives associated with different levels of green roofs. That is something that we did not make those changes. We considered it. We think it's, a good point. But we are going to look at taking some more time to consider that, those differentiations, and most likely incorporate those rather than in a definition in something like the sustainable bonus section. We have some other edits that might be coming to that section in the next few months anyways. So we figured we'd give ourselves some more time to really contemplate how we wanted to differentiate that out and include that there instead. We did incorporate the proposed revisions to the impervious and semi-pervious surface definitions to clarify the setback from property lines doesn't apply to side or rear property lines if they're used to access parking. For the sheds, there's a suggestion that we revise that definition to exempt up to 121 square feet of shed area rather than a shed of up to 121 square feet. We did consider that and bring it to the director. It was determined that that would be much harder to keep track of across properties, and especially for things like code enforcement where they're not necessarily out there able to measure on a quick glance. It would be much more kind of hard to enforce, basically. So staff is recommending that we stick with what we had previously put in If you all still feel that you would prefer to see the exemption of up to 121 square feet instead, we can, bring that to the city commission for their consideration. We did also want to note that staff is adding some language as well to clarify that sheds still need to meet setbacks and placement requirements, even if they don't need a building permit. So even if you don't need your permit for your exempt shed, you still can't put it, right on your property line or right at the front of your house or something. And then our other spot that we had discussed was in the site plan review section 23.2-30. We did take that suggestion to bring the language, the sentence site plan review and approval shall be required for the following, down to that subsection B. There was also some discussion of potentially editing the language of subsection B1 to further clarify when site plan review is required. We again brought this to the director and talked about it. But upon further review, we did opt to stick with our original language that construction of all new structures outside of single family and SFTF zoning districts automatically requires site plan review, and that site plan review shall not be required for residential properties with fewer than 3 total dwelling units. So essentially, it's saying you are automatically needing to do it if you're outside these 2 districts. If you happen to be building, let's say, a townhouse development in the SFTF district, that district itself isn't entirely exempt from the potential to have site plan review. If you are building more than 3 dwelling units, like you're building a 6-unit townhouse in development in SFTF, you would still need site plan review. And the language that we're proposing does allow for that. So we opted to stick with it. It took a lot of effort to summarize and get to the language we have now, and we just really weren't able to come up with something that communicated it better. So that's kind of our update from what we had talked about in June. If you guys have any other questions, things that came up as you reviewed over the past few months, things you want to discuss, we can do that.
So I'm going to go first if you want, because those are comments that I brought up last time. Last time we asked for more time, but I want to go ahead and give them my comments in advance and I appreciate you considering all those and giving me an update. There's one new one that I want to add, and then there's on the language of that last one. Everything else, I'm good with what you said. On the sheds, the reality is it's not that important to me, but I do know of houses that, they sell at Costco, those 5x10 sheds. And in a lot of cases, people put 2 of those just because the arrangement of their property, because you can fit a lawnmower or whatever in there. And so they've got less than 100 square feet, but it's 2 separate physical things. So I'm okay kind of either way though. So on the language one, the only thing that kind of, I'm looking at it again right now, and like condition 3, so this is line 829. So lines 1 and 2 both exclude the 3 dwelling units. So I guess the 2 questions that I have is, if there is something in a zoning district other than single family or 2 family, but it's purely residential and it's just got 3 dwelling units, that would be excluded from having to go through a site plan. That's how I'm reading this. Is that the intent?
So, like if you're building in the MF20 district, if you're building a triplex, you would need a site plan because you are doing 3.
So the way that I understand 1 and 2, which basically are saying, construction of all structures outside of that, but then it has a separate clear statement that says site plans shall not be required for residential properties with less than 3 total dwelling. So this is saying more or less, regardless of where it is, site plan is not required. That's why I was saying some clarification, because I think that this could be argued that you are exempting anywhere in the city residential properties with fewer than 3 dwelling units from needing a site plan. And it's not my understanding that was your intent.
Fair. Would it be better if we just said construction of new structures rather than all new structures, and then it doesn't negate the second sentence that you don't need it for a single family or a 2 family in the MF20 district or something like that?
to be perfectly honest, I think that you should separate that. I think you should get rid of that line that says site plan shall not be required on those two conditions. So you've got construction of anything outside of single family or two family. Pretty much anything outside of that always requires a site plan approval, right?
So I think the difference is that right now we're saying construction of new structures outside of those two districts, not those two uses.
I understand. Construction outside of those two districts,
Uh-huh.
in all cases, requires a site plan approval.
So the
Is that
point
true?
with that,
Is that true or not?
it is not true because you could build single family in a low density multifamily district.
Okay. And you could build a triplex also, and you would
Correct.
not require site plan then.
We would require site plan for the triplex, not for the single family structure.
Okay, so this says fewer than three, so not three and
Correct.
fewer. So a duplex would also not require site plan.
Correct.
Okay. And then what about a triplex in a, well, I get in the two family residential, don't we allow in the multifamily future land use category with a zoning of single family, two family? Aren't there provisions that now allow townhouses within that?
You could do townhouses or you could be able to build potentially 3 units with certain bonus unit provisions under our affordable workforce housing program. So if you
And-
were,
And those properties would require, even if they're in the single family, two family, they would require site plan approval if you do 3 units.
correct, yes.
Okay.
Yep. So basically, what we're trying to communicate here is the only time you don't need a site plan is if you have across your entire property 1 dwelling unit or 2. That's it. If you have commercial structures or at least 3 dwelling units, you're going to need a site plan.
Okay. Okay. I think I guess I do understand that better now that we clarified that. So, I'm going to reread it again. If I have any issues with text, I'll email you something if I have a suggestion that you might want to bring forward, but otherwise I think that covers it. So the one that I wanted to bring up that's kind of new is with regards to the reduction in the parking, the reduction in the parking reduction for mixed use. I have a specific recommendation for that where I believe you should have a caveat in the code that does not allow any development to reduce the parking below the parking requirement for a single use on the property. So for instance, if you have a property that has a mixed use commercial and residential, and it requires 100 residential parking and 100 commercial parking, they can get the full deduction of whatever that is. But if they're proposing something that has 100 residential parking and only 5 commercial parking is required, their entire reduction should be limited to the 5. You shouldn't reduce below what is one of the two uses. So like, let's say, and I'm saying with whatever, if you have the affordable housing, any other reductions that apply to the residential code, because the intent is that mixed use, you have some concurrency between the two parking. You have some people are parking in the evening, some people are parking in the day. But I can't think of any logical reason why a mixed use that has a firm requirement of, let's say, 75 residential parking spaces, however much reduction they get for adding commercial and having some overlap, shouldn't allow them to go below the 75. So, or vice versa. If you had a property that is largely commercial and they're putting some small residential, on the second floor of commercial properties, and they only need 20 spaces for residential, but 100 for their commercial, then you shouldn't offset below the 100 for commercial. You still need the full for whichever use is higher. You've got to at least meet that minimum use. Does that make sense?
I think so. So the mixed use reduction should not be lower than the higher minimum number of parking spaces for the most intensive use on the site.
Right. Whichever use it is that has it, you shouldn't reduce it below that single use. Yep.
Okay.
Yeah, because I think that's what has really upset a lot of people in the community
Mhm.
is I believe that there have been properties that provide a very small amount. They have a large residential component and a very small commercial component. And then they get a 25% reduction on their residential and end up don't providing enough parking for that residential.
And maybe we need to clarify it more. We do have in the code right now that in no case shall they have less than 0.8, so 8/10 of the space for each employee and one space for each dwelling unit. But you're saying on top of that, or
Well, that's specific to, yeah, I think it would still be, yeah, because the same thing applies.
yeah.
So I don't want to name this project in particular, but one has come before us in the past before that
Mhm.
was a tall building that had a
Mhm.
lot of parking spaces associated with it.
Mhm.
And then they essentially converted 2 residential units into shared workspace
Mm.
and said, well, now we get a 25% reduction because we're mixed use.
Mhm. Yeah.
And that was, they literally just gave up 2 units, 4 parking spaces, and they got a 30 parking space reduction for eliminating, for adding 4 commercial things. So that's not appropriate.
Okay. Rest of the board thoughts on that?
Just a little clarification to me under the 23.3.7, the single family residential SFR.
Yeah.
Where it states 1 story tall accessory structure.
Mm-hmm.
Do you have that defined? I mean, could that be an outhouse? Could that be a tool shed, or could that be a garage or?
So technically, under our code, an accessory structure could be any of those things. Yeah.
As long as
We
it's
have-
set back 75 feet?
Yeah. I will say we've never had someone apply for an outhouse. But,
I,
yeah, it would be
well,
we have an accessory structure definition in our code. It's not being edited, which is why it's not in this, but yes, it could be a detached garage, it could be a pool house or a guest house, it could be, a large storage shed or something. Yeah.
under the exhibit J that goes along with that, it says the following special setbacks and restrictions are hereby established in these several areas, but then you only list one. Was this specific or is this?
So there's like 5 or 6 special setbacks. This existing special setback for South Lakeside Drive is the only one that's being edited. That's why just to try to cut down on the number of pages we have, that's why we didn't include B through, I think it's like E or F maybe. South Lakeside Drive is, I believe, the only one that establishes a 50-foot front setback. Most of the others are in areas that have things like dual frontage properties or special minimum sizes, things like that.
Okay, just on, back on the site plan, nothing, when that comes into staff for review, there's like, you have a whole group of people that sit and discuss this as far as a developer coming in and setting up what should be done, what he wants to build, and so forth and so on. What's the initial steps when somebody comes in to talk to a site plan, to get a site plan review?
Sure. So it can vary pretty widely depending on what's being um, applied for. So if it's something like, complete development of a vacant property, that's usually going to be a larger review that involves the entire site plan review team. So typically that will start with a pre-application meeting with our staff to review what they're proposing, go through our checklist, make sure they kind of understand what the process is. Then they will submit to us. We'll do a completeness review, make sure that we have all of the required items for our review to start. If we don't, we'll send them a letter telling them what we're missing and, cycle through that until we have everything. Once we've got everything we need, our staff routes it out to our entire site plan review team. So that is planning, zoning, building, public works, water utilities, electric utilities, fire, the CRA, Lake Worth Drainage District, urban design, which is William. And I think that is everyone. Sometimes the city attorney as well. So we'll route that out to them, give them a deadline to send their comments back to us. When we have all the comments, we write it up into a comment memo, send it off to the applicants. And depending on what those comments or conditions of approval are, we might need to cycle through one or more resubmittals to address those comments before we approve the site
Do
plan.
they
and
all
bring
come
it
in
to
and
you.
do they all come in? Everyone you mentioned is like a different application or a different step? Is that a checklist type of thing you're talking about? You know?
So if they're addressing SPRT comments,
Yeah.
then it's not a
what
brand new application. We would consider that a resubmittal.
Okay.
Yeah, and we would route that out. Anyone who had comments that needed to be addressed would review it again. If it's something more minor, like someone is doing a smaller site plan amendment, um, you know, sometimes we'll just route it to relevant reviewers. We might say, okay, the CRA and the city attorney aren't really involved in this one. They're not really going to need to be concerned with this, but someone wants to put a fence up on a commercial property, we need to make sure fire reviews this so they still have access to whatever they need to have access to.
Mhm.
So it depends sometimes on what exactly is being proposed, who all is doing the heavy lifting on the reviews.
Thank you. Also on with so many of these that came through 2 months ago on the original meeting, if we could have cut back a little bit, we probably could have got through that first meeting faster, I think. And because by the time I got through all these, I didn't have time that in the June meeting, So, but I have no other questions. Thank you.
Anyone else?
Okay. Do we have any public comment on this agenda item before we see our motion?
We had none submitted, so unless we have anyone wanting to provide some in person.
Okay. What did you guys think of the parking one? I know she had asked that and we got off, but you understand what I'm kind of saying with parking. There was one that came before us that had, you could tell 100%, they didn't have room to park what they were doing. And so they needed a reduction and they found that they got a 25% for mixed use. And so they basically just took a little corner of the building and said, we're going to create like one of those WeWork spaces here. And by doing that, all of a sudden they got 25% reduction across the board on their, so they're changing that down from 25 to 15 is thing. But in addition, I still think that any reduction beyond the commercial. So if you add a commercial use that requires 20 spaces, that's the maximum you should be able to reduce. You should still, if you're residential parking under the code with all the, you can replace parking with bicycle racks and you've got provisions with affordable and you've got all these other things that can reduce parking. But once you've done that, you should still have to meet that residential, no matter what you provide, or vice versa. If you had a big commercial component, putting a couple of units on top of it shouldn't get you to reduce your commercial parking load.
Well, we were up against that a while back on that one,
Yeah.
one case with the parking. Yeah. Probably the reason it went from 25 to 15.
It could be, but just in general, do you guys kind of agree that you should,
Yes, I
if you've
agree.
got two uses?
There isn't enough parking, as far as I'm concerned, with most of the stuff.
It's always a difficult thing, but I just feel like we shouldn't be creating an incentive for somebody to kind of use a loophole. So if you're going to have a parking requirement for your larger use, it makes sense that whatever the largest use is, at a minimum, you're meeting that requirement.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay.
I
So,
read into.
all right, so if we can include that in the motion.
Mhm.
So I can't make a motion because I'm the chair today.
I make the motion. Change the wording.
You're making a motion that we're going to recommend approval of all of these changes, subject to the changes staff already made and the additional modification of the parking as discussed. Okay, do we have a second?
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay, passes unanimously. Okay, new business. Ordinance 2025-08, Consideration of an ordinance amending chapter 23, article 5, section 23-5, signs on streets.
All right, so this is a much shorter LDR amendment. It just came through too late to get tacked on to the rest of them. This one is pretty simple. It is basically what it sounds like. It's talking about putting signs on streets. So the first kind is to allow the city manager to authorize city signs on city rights of way, including alleys. So for these, it would be something like, the sort of light pole signs that we have on places like 10th and 6th. It would be allowing the city manager to authorize those signs. Technically, right now, those signs are not exactly in compliance with the code. So this would fix that. The second kind is allowing the city commission to authorize non-city signs in unimproved city rights of way, including alleys, subject to a revocable use permit. So a non-city sign, basically, it's not something that, Public Works is putting up or, is a welcome to Lake Worth Beach sign. So this would be something like a neighborhood wants to put up a sign, welcome to XYZ neighborhood. So that it still has to serve a public purpose. So something like a neighborhood sign serves a public purpose. It's not just, welcome to my business. And it would be specifically only in unimproved city rights of way. And that revocable use permit at city commission would put it, in the public eye. And the revocable use permit would say, if we ever need to start using this unimproved right of way, we want to improve it and make it active, we can say bye-bye to that sign if we need to. So that's kind of the quick summary of what's being proposed here. Yeah, if you guys have any questions.
Can you give a little bit of background? I'm just curious, like this seems like really specific and why it's unimproved right of ways. I'm assuming this is stuff like no dumping signs, things that like, if you're putting signs in the alley, it would be like no trash dumping, neighborhood watch signs. Things like
Yeah.
that. Is that kind of the intent or?
Most of the city signs that would go in somewhere like an alley, yes, would be something like that. The unimproved rights of way, including alleys, there is at least one specific case where we have an unimproved, non-used alley it's literally grass, no one drives on it, it doesn't go anywhere. And we do, in this case, the reason I was using a neighborhood example, we do have a neighborhood interested in putting up a sign. They have no public land available to put it on. And so this was proposed as it's vacant land that's not really serving any other purpose. So the reason that the non-city ones are specifically in unimproved city rights of ways, in this case, the unimproved city right of way that was part of sparking this change is technically an alley, which is why that's included there. But we were looking for non-city signs, not basically, have unused land as kind of an additional justification. It's not like we're losing any use of a piece of public property or right of way.
Okay. Okay, that makes sense. Any comments or questions from the board?
No, actually, I move to recommend to the city commission to adapt the proposed LDR text amendment, including an ordinance 2025-08.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Before we vote, are there any public comments? Nope. Okay, seeing none, then let's call a vote. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Passes unanimously. Okay, item B under new business, PZB project number 25-00007. Request by Kelly Olive for the approval of a mural.
Good afternoon. I'm Rosie Escobar. I'm the community planner at Planning and Zoning. I'll be presenting this item. So this would be a request by Kelly Olive for the approval of a mural. It's going to be located in the east facade of the building. So this is the aerial view of the block. As you can see, the property is located on the west block of the 12th Avenue South and the South Federal Highway intersection. Thanks. A mural is proposed on the east facade of the building. The mural illustrates art and nature-inspired elements that are reflective of the city's identity as a welcoming and harmonious environment and will be installed using high-quality, weather-resistant materials to ensure durability and longevity. Here's an example of a rendering, a drawing of the mural and the location where it's going to be facing South Federal Highway. The proposed mural, it's a vibrant and professionally designed piece of public art that will be designed by the artist Daniel Chevery, also known as Discipline 1. Included are a couple of his notable pieces, which includes also being a part of the local Lake Worth Beach Street Painting Festival. Yeah, there you go. As outlined in the staff report, it is the staff analysis that the mural complies with the comprehensive plan, strategic plan, community appearance criteria, and standards for murals as conditioned. Staff is recommending the board to consider the appropriateness of the mural location. If the board moves to approve the mural, staff has drafted conditions of approval of the proposed mural installation requests, which are also in the next this slide. You see. Good. These are our recommendations with the conditions. This concludes the staff presentation. Let me know if you have any questions. The next page is, yeah. So this slide will show how the mural will look facing South Federal Highway. That's it.
This is, I think it's the second time now where we approve something along one of the main arteries that originally is not allowed, like we did the one on Dixie, I believe, a while back, right? So again, this one is facing federal, so we have to decide
If it's appropriate.
if it's appropriate, right?
You can never have enough murals.
Yeah, I agree. I think this one, it's a existing building, and on an existing building, I think it just makes it more vibrant. I agree. I don't have any issue with the mural.
Absolutely.
Okay, so we have a motion. We have a motion.
I'm really good.
Well,
Yeah, I'll take this one. I move to approve PZB project number 25-000-00007 for a mural installation on the east facade of the building located at 1201 South Federal Highway. The application meets the mural criteria based on the data and analysis in the staff report.
Can you
I'll
make sure
second.
that is that approval with the approved or stated conditions?
Yes, with the approved stated conditions.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Mark did second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Nope. Okay, motion passes. I didn't ask for public comment, but I'm assuming
I didn't
the room is
see.
empty here. We don't have.
Ass wasn't in.
Thank you. Okay. Any planning issues?
Just
Easy.
one. Kind of a heads up to you all that we are looking at a potentially very full docket for September. So we did want to, and we know that your your regular September meeting is close to the Labor Day holiday. So we wanted to do kind of a quick quorum check for the 3rd or potentially the 17th. Just to kind of make sure that if we need a second meeting or we need to move to the, secondary date, that we will have quorum on at least one of those dates.
I know I'm good on the 3rd.
So Annie is correct, but consider both meetings for quorum because like she said, we have a full meeting. So not 3 or 17. If we can do 3 and 17, get your thoughts. And
You say 3 and 17?
we're looking at possibly the second meeting also
Oh.
in the month. Hopefully not. but we want to be prepared in case we have an idea. We want to get an idea for them.
September. That's in September. So I believe I will be available for both of them. I have a big real estate closing the week of the 17th, but right now that's scheduled for the 19th and I should still be okay. So
Just the third for me, I'll be on vacation on the 17th.
anyone who has to check, you can always email Sherry to this and then let her know.
So that's the 3rd and the 17th in September?
Yeah.
Correct.
2 meetings that month, or we're just trying to?
Probably.
Yeah, right now I'm available for both.
Let me know.
Just depends if a cook doesn't come in.
Okay. Any other department reports? Any board member comments? Seeing none, I move to adjourn. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.